It's March the 3rd. March the 1st, 2019. It's almost 11 o'clock in the morning. It's 34 degrees on the 1st of March. It's like never-ending winter. Which brings me into our little topic of conversation today, what liberals call climate change. I'm 54 years old. I remember several things that were going to cause the end of the world. And I remember being taught in grammar school. The first thing I remember was overpopulation in the 70s. We were all going to die from overpopulation. We were all going to starve to death. And back then, the world population was basically 4 billion. It's 8 now. The next thing I recall that was going to kill us all were PCBs, polybiphenyl chlorals. Polybiphenyl chloride, I believe. It's an insulating, oily liquid that's in every little round transformer that you see on an electric pole. That was going to kill us all, too. And then it was let's see. The rainforests were going to disappear. We were all going to be dead from that. Then it was I remember the big one, the hole in the ozone layer. We were all going to be killed by UV light from the sun because of aerosol sprays and Freon. So in all the Western nations of the world, they made all that stuff illegal and replaced it with very, very much more expensive materials to do the job. That's what they did. And let's see, we had acid rain. Acid rain was going to kill us all. So there were all these different things, and they were being taught. They taught kids in school. They actually would do that to scare the hell out of you. I remember that very well. Now we have the latest scam. Latest scam they used to call global warming. And you blamed anybody who lives in the Midwest or any place where it's called, there's no global warming. We're still freezing our ass off. And then a lot of people would be saying, hey, I'm all for global warming. I'm all for it. If it makes it warmer, I'd rather have warmer winters. But that wasn't popular to do that, so they changed the name to climate change. And the great thing about climate change, you can blame anything on climate change. So if you have one year where there's particularly more hurricanes, it's climate change's fault. If you have another year where there's more tornadoes in one region or more rain in one region, or you have a flood or a dry winter or a wet winter or a snowy winter, you can blame climate change, man-made climate change. And the idea was greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane, trapped, hold heat in the Earth's atmosphere like a greenhouse, and it artificially heats up the atmosphere, and it's all because we have combustion engines and industry, and we're pumping out carbon dioxide all the time. And we're all going to die. And it's become a political issue. And the Democrats are jumping on this. And the latest champion of this is Alexandria Cortez, who says, oh, we're going to be dead in 12 years. You know, the world's going to end in 12 years. Don't have children because their future's going to suck. God, do you think... Let's go back 2,000 years ago when the world was ruled by Roman Empire and everybody were slaves. What if everybody decided back then not to have children? Think about that. Think about 1300s Europe, where a third of the population died off because of the plague, and they thought the world was ending. Now, can you imagine that? A third of the population is dying off. What would happen if they all said, well, we're not going to have children anymore? Yeah, we would have died out because people being stupid. So, here's this in a nutshell. Climate change is a giant tax scheme. See, the interesting thing about it is they want to tax you. They want to put a carbon tax on vehicles, usage of anything that puts out carbon dioxide, and they're going to take the money and fight it. How do you fight something like that? So here's the other part of that. You're going to do this with all the Western nations. So it's going to be Europe, Paris Climate Accord, okay? You're going to do it with Europe, and you're going to stifle industry. You're going to tax industry more, and you know damn well they're going to rob that tax fund. They're not going to really use it for what they say they're going to use it, because what the hell are you going to do? So, but developing nations like China, who has about 2 billion people, India, who have about 1 billion people, who don't give a damn about the environment, who don't give a damn about pollution, who don't give a damn, I mean, I seriously, just the sanitary practices of those countries, you really need to look into it. In India, they got no sanitation with their water and stuff. They burn their dead, they throw dead bodies in the Ganges River. I mean, the hospital will take somebody that's dying, and when they die on a slab along the river, they torch them and shove them in the river. They really do this. There's no sanitation, no sewer reclamation. They shit and piss, and their waterways are beyond polluted. China is the same way. China's waterways are beyond polluted. You think they're going to change? Because when you try to implement technology to clean all this stuff up, it costs money. They want to be competitive. So they don't give a shit about the environment. So they're going to be pumping out CO2, burning coal. Anything that Europe and the United States do to combat climate change won't work. It's a bullshit Ponzi scheme, more or less. It's a tax scheme. And the Democrats aren't going to tell you this because they're playing on people's fears, young people who are too stupid to understand anything about science. Interesting thing about plants use carbon dioxide. They breathe it like animals breathe oxygen. And the plants, the more carbon dioxide that's in the air, the more oxygen the plants produce. And plants actually grow more rapidly. Now that depends on how much water they're getting as well. It depends on that. But there's a system in place to deal with it. So here's the other part of it. Climate changes on this planet all the time. It goes through periods of hot, cold, wet, and dry. Now, I'm not a big evolutionist, but I know all the rhetoric behind it, and the eras of time where we had wet, dry, cold, hot. There was a time where the sea levels were 10,000 years ago, which wasn't long ago, really, where the sea levels were extremely low, so low you could walk across from Russia right into Alaska. And yes, that is true. And that happened with a lot of places in the world. The sea levels were so low because all the water was tied up in ice. And about 10,000 years ago, the time where there were woolly mammoths and saber-toothed cats and giant ground sloths and etc., those ice caps began to melt, the sea levels rose. And we're talking ice caps where you had glaciers spreading through almost half of North America, over a majority of Europe. This is established science. You can't. Now, what caused that? Well, what happens is the Earth goes through these cycles that revolve around the sun. The sun has got more to do with the climate on our planet than anything else. Solar cycles. So activity, when solar activity, where times when there's a lot more solar flares and the sun is more active, and it creates these cycles. The Cretaceous period of Earth's history, the time at the peak of when the dinosaurs ruled the Earth. The average temperature was 80 degrees worldwide. Think about this. 80 degrees worldwide. There was a time where Antarctica didn't have any snow and dinosaurs lived there. Think about this. Now the only things that live in Antarctica are penguins. Penguins and seals. There are no penguins on the North Pole, in case anybody knew that. There's no polar bears on the South Pole. There's just penguins in Antarctica. Antarctica, the moon has been explored more than Antarctica, believe that or not. It's just a giant ice sheet. It's the coldest place on the planet. So, we live in a world that goes through cycles. Now, human civilization has only been here for maybe recorded human civilization. You can make an argument it began about maybe anywhere from 40,000 to 10,000 years ago based on cave paintings and people leaving a written record somewhere. But human civilization didn't really, recorded human civilization where we left evidence of starting to live in cities, maybe about 5,000 years, 5,000 BC, before Christ. Now they like to use BCE, before common era. That's the new nickname over, so no one's offended by the name of Christ. So I love that stupid stuff. So what we have is a giant tax scheme revolving about a scare tactic to get people to fork over money for the carbon, that basically for what you breathe out. And in order to really fully do this, you have to have a one world government. So what you see, there's whoever's controlling things behind the scenes or whatever, and call me a conspiracy theorist, I'm fine with that. But in order to save the planet, you have to bring the planet under one world government, because you can't have China and India doing their thing when the rest of the world decides that they're going to go along with some kind of climate treaty. You're going to have to enact laws on an international basis, and there's a lot of countries that are going to say screw that. But if you really, so what you want to do is you want to scare humanity into giving up national sovereignty and putting it into a global society, into a global governing body, a one world government, and all the world's countries get divided up into governorships, more or less. Just kind of like how the United States works. Every state is controlled by a governor. So you have regions of the world or different countries that will be under governorship, under a one world government. Now, in order to bring about a one world government, you got to scare the hell out of the 8 billion people that live here. In order to have a giant scheme like this, and like I said, they've tried to do this before, but they never had the ability. But the technology there is now available for a one world government to control everything. It's there. The computer technology has allowed constant surveillance. It has allowed some crazy stuff. So we're at an interesting point of time where you have young people coming up that are being brainwashed into a global tax scheme that it would be very happy to give up national sovereignty for the sake of the future, because they have this belief that there is no God and God doesn't control anything, and we are in control of the planet and the destiny of our world. So and that's really what this is about. And if you ever look at people with the climate change thing, it's kind of like pseudo-religious. It's really bizarre. Atheism almost borders on a kind of on a religion, how they are, because really when it comes down to it's human origins and what you believe about human origins. And in an evolutionary standpoint, human beings worship themselves, and we become our own gods, and we master and control everything that we touch and survey. So I could probably explain it better when my mind is a little more clear, but there are elements of a pseudo-religious following when it comes to atheistic dogma, scientific dogma. It almost, that science has become like that. It's become a dogma. They like to say that religion is, but science has become a dogma too, and it goes along with atheism. And in order to save ourselves, we have to come together as a global community and put ourselves under the boot heel of a world dictatorship, more or less. And I know that young people will think this is the coolest thing, because it's a Star Trek type scenario. It's a science fiction scenario where the world is one and we are the world. And let me tell you something. the world would become a huge, huge ass shithole if we had a borderless world where everybody could just go wherever the hell they want. There's reasons for countries, there's reasons for borders, and it really comes down to this. It comes down to containing evil. I know that doesn't make sense, but it really does. Because when you have a lot of different countries, some of the countries are not going to be like, you know, like Islamic countries, where you throw homosexuals off roofs, you keep women completely covered up, you cut off people's hands because, you know, they steal a Snicker bar out of the drugstore. Nobody wants to live like that. But you have these different cultures all over the world, and some of them are shit cultures. I mean, let's be honest. Let's get rid of the "we are the world" bullshit. Some cultures are shit cultures. Do you want to live in a culture where they eat dogs and cats? Where it's socially acceptable to eat more? How about living in a culture where your aborted fetuses are eaten? Because that does happen. People don't want to talk about it, but it's true. It's a little hidden secret. You want to live in a culture where you eat animals based on their physical qualities, and you think you're going to get those physical qualities back by eating those animals. So you have a population of 2 billion people that eat turtles because they think that turtles are going to give you a long life, and all of a sudden there's no turtles left. You know what I'm talking about? This is what globalism is about. Globalism is about taking down cultural barriers and trying to meld everybody into one narrative of obedience. And that's what it's all about. And it's about a handful of people getting control over the entire planet. Because at a point where you have everything already, you have all the wealth amassed and it all belongs to you. The only thing that you want after that is power. It's the only thing that you feel is going to give you meaning in life, because you already have all the wealth in the world. You need power. You need control. And that's what that is all about. So that's what climate change is really about. It's about one world government, one world control, and a giant tax scheme, scare tactic to get people to surrendering their individual sovereign rights as nations. That's really what it comes down to. And you have a whole bunch of young people. And I've met a lot of these young people, like kids. They are terrified because the liberal school systems are teaching that we're going to go extinct if we don't do something about this. It's the same old song and dance, except for now they have the ability to scare the hell out of people because of our technology and the manipulation and propaganda and the school system. And because of that, unfortunately, we can't give in to this shit. We can't give in to it. You need to educate your children. You need to tell them things very similar to what I said. The earth goes through cycles because of the sun. And that's really that's what controls everything. The sun is the catalyst by which the earth works. All the systems on the planet, all of life kind of revolves around the sun. The plants, the animals, all revolve around the sun. The daylight hours are consistent. Weather and temperature are not. So what keeps the living systems on this planet, the plants and animals cycling, reproducing and all, actually has to do with the sun. More than it has to do with weather. More than it has to do with climate. But people don't understand that because they're not taught these things in science. Because it's more important to teach gender studies to children. It's more important to teach them about anal sex in grammar and high school. And it's more important to teach them about homosexuals and so on in school than it is real science or mathematics or anything that understands that. Because that's the kind of shithole our country and our society has de-evolved into. I know I'm a bastion of sunshine, but wake up, take your glasses off, and start looking and seeing what's really going on.